Jacob the Shoemaker and the Elves by T. Krause. Jacob the Shoemaker and the Elves is based on a Grimm tale. Once upon a time there lived a shoemaker named Jacob. He was honest and hard-working, but he was very, very poor. Times were bad, and soon he and his wife Helen were just about destitute. At last he had only enough leather to make one pair of shoes. That night Jacob cut out a shoe pattern out of the leather. "Now," he said, "I am all ready to begin work in the morning. I will get up early and make a pair of shoes." Then he said his prayers. In his prayers he said thank you for all that he did have, which wasn't very much because of how poor he and his wife were. But none the less he was grateful. Then he went to bed and slept in peace. In the morning he got up early to begin his work. How surprised he was to find the shoes lying finished on the table. He looked carefully at the well-done shoes. There was not a bad stitch in the work. As he looked around his house he wondered who had done it. He could not even guess, as there was not a clue. Soon a customer came in to buy some shoes. Jacob solemnly told the customer that he only had one pair of shoes to sell. Luckily, the shoes happened to be just the right size he needed. The shoes were so well made that he gladly bought it for a good price. With this money Jacob got leather to make 2 more pairs of shoes. That night he cut them out. Again he did not have to make them the next day. The work was mysteriously done for him during the night. As luck would have it, the shoemaker sold these 2 pairs of shoes for a very good price as well. So Jacob bought leather for 4 more pairs of shoes. These he cut out that night and found them finished the next morning as well. This routine continued night after night. The work with Jacob began one day, he found finished the next. He had only to buy the leather and cut out the shoe pattern. He and his wife became rich off of the sales of the shoes, and word of mouth about Jacob's shoes spread. One winter night Jacob cut out several pairs of shoes. Instead of going to bed, he said to Helen, "My dear, I should like to find out who helps us every night. Suppose we sit up and watch?" Helen agreed, so they left a candle burning. They hid themselves in a corner of the room. As the clock struck midnight, there came into the room 2 little elves with hardly any clothes on. They sat down on the shoemaker's table and began to work. Jacob and Helen looked at each other in surprise at the sight they were seeing. Each had heard of elves, but none really believed in such things. But here were 2 little elves right before their very eyes. The elves sewed so well and so fast that the shoes were finished in no time. Then they skipped down and away they went from whence they came. The next morning Helen said, "Jacob, these little elves have helped us so generously, and I would like to do something for them. I noticed they hardly had any clothes on, and it's winter time. They must be cold. I will make them some clothes and knit them some stockings. Will you make a pair of shoes for each of them?" "That I will, and gladly too," said Jacob. So they set to work and made the clothes and shoes. That night they did not put any work on the table. Instead, they laid the gifts they made with a thank you note. Then they hid once again in a corner to see what the little elves would do. Sure enough, right at midnight in came the elves. They jumped up on the table, expecting to find leather cut out for them to make into shoes. There was nothing but the beautiful little clothes. The elves looked at them in wonder. They felt the soft cloth and put their hands in the little pockets. With glee they dressed themselves and jumped and danced for joy. Over stools and chairs they went, singing. Then they heard the couple hiding in a corner. The elves told them to come out and meet them. The 4 of them introduced themselves. The elves thanked the shoemaker and his wife for their gifts. The shoemaker thanked the elves for making the shoes for him, and told what great jobs they did and that all the people loved them. All four joined in dance and songs and had such a good time. It had been a long time that Jacob and Helen had any fun. At last it was time for the elves to return from wherever it is they came from. The elves said if Jacob wanted, that they would share their skills with him the next night. Jacob gladly accepted. That night Jacob and Helen said their prayers before going to bed, and now they had so much more to add to their thank you prayers. On time, right at midnight the next night, the elves entered. They shared with Jacob their skills, as promised, and some great new ideas for men and women alike. With these new skills and ideas, Jacob was sure to be a master shoemaker and very popular for sure. At last, after all was done, the elves danced out of the room, and they never came back any more. But Jacob and his wife, who had been kind and thankful to those who had helped them, was never again in want. As long as they lived, he and Helen lacked for nothing, and Jacob did become famous for his shoes. The end.